Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us here in person, and also welcome to the people who are with us online. Today, we will present the key outcomes of the 68th BEREC Ordinary Plenary Meetings, which took place in the beginning of June 2026. During this public debriefing, we will provide an overview of the main discussions and decisions adopted by the Board of Regulators. We will also share updates on recently adopted BEREC documents, upcoming consultations and events, and other activities relevant to the European electronic communication sector. We have reserved time for questions throughout the session and encourage participants to engage with us during the Q&A segments. With that, let us begin by looking at today's program. Next slide, please. We will begin with the draft further guidance on 5G network slicing, followed by BEREC Statement on the phase-out of 2G and 3G networks. After the first Q&A session, we will present BEREC's assessment of the Digital Network Act proposal, one of the most important ongoing discussions concerning the future regulatory framework for electronic communications in Europe. We will conclude with a broader update on BEREC activities, including recently adopted documents, stakeholder engagement, workshops, and public consultations. A final Q&A session will provide an opportunity to address any remaining question. Let us now move to the first substantive topic, the draft further guidance of 5G network slicing. I will give the floor to the co-chairs of Open Internet Working Group, Christoph Martens from BNetzA, Germany, and Amadi for Moltke from BIPT, Belgium. Dear co-chairs, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Marco. As I said, here we're presenting the draft further guidance on the 5G network slicing. Quick background on the topic. BEREC has always been very clear that, in our view, the Open Internet regulation is perfectly compatible with 5G network slicing, but we have understood and heard calls from certain categories of stakeholders, mainly some industry stakeholders as well as the European Commission, for more clarity on this specific issue. Therefore, against this backdrop, we first organized an internal workshop last year, and we followed that up by a call for input in December to feed this exercise to provide further guidance. Next slide, please. So what were our strategic objectives and the main messages that we have? Well, our main goal, of course, was to establish some clear guidance on the specific issue of network slicing. The idea being to provide more clarifications on how network slicing can be implemented to provide internet access service and specialized services in a way that is compliant with the Open Internet regulation, and therefore enable providers to better self-assess their offers against the regulation. The main message that we have had and that we still have with this guidance is that the Open Internet regulation is definitely not a problem. It's definitely not a hindrance to innovation in this space. Next slide, please. So there we have the guidance, which, the content is as follows. We start with a brief introduction, providing context and a few bits of information on the technological aspects at play. And then we delve more deeply into the substantive matters, how to assess compliance with the core of the Open Internet regulation, i.e. Articles 3233, and of course the dedicated provision relating to optimized services under Article 3.5. To make the whole exercise a bit more practical, because this was indeed a call by stakeholders, we tried to provide a set of generic examples, which are clearly not exhaustive, but they should give a better idea on how to actually practically go through the exercise of self-assessing offers against the regulation. And for the sake of transparency, we ended the document by providing an overview of the clarifications that we tried to provide. Next slide,
please.
So how do we proceed from here? Well, as you probably have noticed, the document has been published for consultation, which will run until the 6th of August, so 2 months. Final submissions are scheduled to be delivered for CN4 and P4. And by deliverables, I mean the final set of guidelines accompanied by the report on the outcome of the public consultation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amadi. Thank you also to the Christoph for all contribution. Christoph joined us online. I invite now the co-chairs of Wireless Network Evolution Group, Joe Lynch from Comrec Ireland and Zitze van der Gast from ACM Netherlands to present us BEREC Statement on phase-out of 2G, 3G. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco, and good afternoon, colleagues. Just to make an opening remark about service and technology neutrality. If you go to the next slide, please. So service and technology neutrality is a cornerstone of spectrum licensing. It gives the ability for an operator to deploy a new technology when there is a demand to do so, but it also gives them the ability to phase out legacy technologies. And there may be many reasons why an operator may wish to phase out a technology. It could be that the newer technology is more energy efficient, and energy is a big component of the operational expense in the radio access network. It can be to get a more efficient use of the radio spectrum itself, or it can be that the cost of maintaining the outmoded technology is a burden. So it really is up to the operators to determine how to and when to phase out a technology. Regulators, we do not want to steer the market, so it is for operators to make that call. So the reason I tell you that is because since 2023, we've been studying this in our reports. So if the first bullet here talks about some of the work we did in 2023 in document 23204, and essentially it also touched on, as well as the benefits and drawbacks that I might have mentioned, the practices and challenges faced in phasing out. At that time, we felt that Europe was on a good footing. It was well prepared for phasing out technologies because we were learning from what was happening in other jurisdictions. Now, if I move to the second bullet here, and I've been working for more than 20 years on complex regulatory topics, and this is a complex regulatory topic here, and it is tinged with a sense of anxiety and importance because, and let me explain why, we've seen that there are certain combinations of 4G and 5G devices with different mobile network settings, which means that it may be not possible to fully contact the emergency services numbers such as 112. Also, the fallback position to an emergency state service or to emergency roaming and CAMPON is also not seen as sufficient. So these are important issues to address and to set right. So that brings me to maybe my final point on this slide, which was since December this year, internally in BEREC, we've had discussions trying to describe this problem, looking at what observations there are around the problem, as well as possible solutions, both internally with our experts and with some invited experts to our working group. And for our part, Zitze van der Gast and myself, we have been meeting you, the stakeholders, to discuss this important topic with you. So I want to appreciate the interaction that we have had with the stakeholders, and I encourage you to make submissions to the work program year on year so that we can track important items. So with that, I will pass over to Zitze, who will give you a little more information on some of the challenges and possible solutions, and then you can read the statement for yourselves. It is quite short, but designed to be digestible in very quickly. So Sitya, the floor is yours, and next slide.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, next slide, please. People expect 112 to work, and BEREC expects 112 to work, and also the EECC framework, so the telecom code, requires it. So our observations are that with phasing out both 2G and 3G in a network, degradation of 112 access by devices using that network may occur, but we hear different root causes. So, and it's also multifaceted root causes with unknown scale. So estimations vary. It's likely less than 1%, but we hear different percentages. And also we hear various device brands and types. Also, we cannot exclude that a 4G device that is considered problematic with 112 access in one network without 2G and 3G will have no problems in another network without 2G and 3G. So the problem may not exclusively be on the device side, but also on the network side. So, well, in short, when you need it, degradation, even some extra delay of 112 access is just unacceptable. And the problem can only be solved by a combination of stakeholders in the market. MNOs, device manufacturers, network equipment vendors, and others, for instance, well, like phone shops, but also others involved, MVNOs, etc. They all have to step up and do their part. This short BEREC statement urges all stakeholders to play their role in problem detection and problem mitigation, and not wait for others to act. Stakeholders involved in phase-out should also perform risk assessments. Transparency is needed to increase awareness of all stakeholders of problems and solutions. People expect 112 to work when they need it. And with this, I would like to give the floor back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Zitze. Thank you, Joe. First of all, let me thank all the co-chairs for those two presentations. Actually, this concludes the first part of today's briefing. We would now be happy to take questions on the two topics presented so far. So the first one is the draft further guidance of the 5G network slicing, and the second, BEREC statement on the phase-out of 2G, 3G networks. We look forward to hearing your views and addressing any questions you might have. Please.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Peter Lonigan. I'm a senior policy officer at ENA, the European Emergency Number Association. We'd just like to thank BEREC for its statement and disposition. It's a very important topic. I might just note that in addition to phones not being able to contact 112, even if they're or other national numbers, even if they are 4G and 5G capable, that will only happen with a relatively small but still quite large proportion of devices. It seems that caller location and callback information will not be available in general when roaming, which is also a very serious issue, especially, of course, because when people are in other countries, they may struggle to communicate in the local language, and they might also not know where they are. So in those situations, callback information and caller location is more important than ever. Thank you again.
Thank you. Anyone else would place opinion or question? Let me check on the chat if we received some questions. Yes, we have actually 3. So I have noticed is from El Bayumi. I have noticed that some smartphones cannot establish emergency calls via IMS. So it means voice over LTE, voice over Wi-Fi, or voice over NR. For example, in France, many mobile phones are capable of regular voice over LTE calls, but cannot place calls to 112 or another local emergency numbers. I especially observed this when they use a SIM card from the French carrier Free Mobile. How do you plan to address such issue, given that it involves multiple stakeholders, including mobile phone manufacturers, chipset makers, mobile carriers, and national telecom authorities, such as ARCEP and CCED in France. I will give the floor back to Zice and Joe, please.
Thank you, Marco. I will take this question. Although specific cases are the concern of the MNOs involved and also with the country government and country national regulatory authority watching over it, this is exactly why we published the statement about ensuring emergency access after the phase-outs. Because the problem is not limited to one MNO or one country, and more transparency would help others in the ecosystem, such as network equipment vendors and device manufacturers, to help solving the problem. So the French regulator ARCEP is part of BEREC and also contributed to this statement. And at this moment, BEREC is convinced that the telecom industry can and should step up to detect and be transparent and propose solutions. But BEREC will keep monitoring phase-outs and related issues, but at this moment, no concrete follow-up steps are planned.
Thank you, Zice. We have another one. I think this one is for Amadi. This disruptive analysis. How does network slicing apply to MVNOs or when used on third-party network such as roaming partners or indoor neutral host system?
Thanks a lot, Marco, and my co-chair Christoph will probably jump in to complement whatever I say here. But the way we can see it is you have three scenarios here with, roughly speaking, the same underlying potential problem, which is that of coordination. A slice really only means anything to anyone inside one's own network, and so the moment you cross into someone else's network, well, obviously you have potential coordination issues. So if you break down the three scenarios, MVNO first, in the context of MVNO, you have obviously different levels in terms of the MVNO model. With the basic reseller, you basically have no control at all. So here slicing is something that the host network would basically sell as a service. With the full MVNO, you have the core network, but still when it comes to slicing, full end-to-end slicing, sure, the core network is something, but you're still going to need some form of interoperability with the person who owns the access network. So again, even in the full MVNO scenario, there's going to be some form of coordination which is going to be required. Potential competition issues as well, as the MNO could potentially self-preference its own offers. The two other scenarios, obviously a bit different, but still, again, coordination issues at play. Roaming, in theory, we could imagine seamless QoS across borders, basically. You could imagine a business traveler that has a subscription with slicing, implemented slicing in its home country, crosses the border and right away connects to a high QoS slice in the visited country network. Obviously, that's theory, and in practice, the slice that may exist inside the home network obviously may not automatically exist in the visited country's network. So therefore, again, coordination issue at play. And then in the third example, the indoor neutral host. I mean, here the scenario is basically one shared system, for example, in an airport or in a stadium, which is serving multiple operators. And so basically here, the shared equipment has to support the combined slice requirements of everybody who's using the network. And so here you have capacity management issues at play. And again, this supporting everybody at once problem is something that's the hard part, and again involves a certain degree of coordination. In all cases, though, I mean, there's going to be issues of interferences which have to be managed. And again, the key word here, coordination between the different players involved. Christoph, I don't know if I missed anything on this.
No, that's perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you, Amadi. Thank you, Christoph. We have another one, which is related to the 2G, 3G phase out. So what are the needed actions for MNOs in view of 2G, 3G sunset and emergency calls? Is active testing of 4G and 5G emergency calls a suggested way forward? Should active testing in roaming be a regular requirement? Zitze, Joe, please, the floor is yours.
Excellent, thank you, Marco. Maybe I'll start with this one, and I can pass to Sitze. So really, the statement is about the roles and responsibilities and trying to suggest roles and responsibilities. And for now, it is really about the risk assessment that the MNOs can do. And we are aware of emergency testing numbers, and they have been used to good effect in at least one country. So it's not a full solution, but it is a possible solution that certainly helps to identify problematic devices and network settings, etc. So it is something we're aware of, but for now, it's risk assessment by the MNOs, and potentially then with NRAs providing some risk monitoring. So really, collaboration is needed here. We wouldn't give any one suggested solution ourselves from BEREC. There's also work being done actually by ENA in relation to similar matters. I think you might have already mentioned it, Peter, but there is a recommendation on emergency caller location information criteria for mobile originated emergency communications. So ENA is also working in that. It's important to get stakeholders included. Sitze, do you want to build on that, or should we just take the next question as well?
Probably take the next question, please.
Okay, so the European Commission has been advised in a study to maintain 2G for eCall until 2030. How does BEREC see the eCall issue? Well, I can maybe start with that one if you wish, and you can elaborate. But the Commission has recently published a study here. So for our part, I think member states are probably looking for, we will be looking to see what is the member state reaction to the study by the Commission. I think it's an important topic, but it's very different than what's in our statement. So to be clear, our statement is focused on this most urgent and serious matter which we have identified, and it doesn't extend to eCall as yet. Sitze, is there anything you can elaborate on, please?
Yes, maybe that this 112 issue is much more urgent because it already occurs when one network phases out both 2G and 3G, and eCall in the vast majority of cases does work until the last one switches out. So but this is another subject, but also I think that it's proper, like Joe said, to wait for the EC to make a move to for instance suggest to the member states that they would postpone, and then we also have to wait for the member states to react on that. So let's yes, because we are not mandated to go into that beforehand. So let's wait.
Sure, thank you, Sitze. And maybe just to add that it brings in another set of stakeholders, of course, the automotive industry. So some have mentioned after sales solutions, etc. So there's a whole other environment there that we don't get into at the moment, at least from the BEREC side. Maybe I pass back to you, Marco, unless there's something else.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, co-chairs, for all your answers. We will now move to the next agenda item. So BEREC's assessment of the Digital Network Act proposal. The European Commission's proposals could have significant implication for the future regulatory framework for electronic communications. BEREC has carefully examined the text and adopted an assessment highlighting both the opportunities and the areas that require further consideration. I will now hand over to the co-chairs of the Regulatory Framework Working Group, who will present BEREC's key findings and recommendations. Erwin Kaisinger, NMHHH from Hungary, and Antonello De Tommaso, EGICOM from Italy. Please go ahead.
Many thanks, Marco, and good afternoon to all participants in person and remotely. As some of you may remember, on the 30th of March, BEREC published a high-level opinion and at the same time announced that a more in-depth analysis would have been developed and published by June. And so here we are with those 16 papers that have been discussed and approved last week at our plenary in Dublin. You may notice that the paper are basically covering all of the most relevant aspects of the code, of the DNA, sorry, but some fundamental aspects you may see that are still missing. There's no so much speculation to be done about that. It is just a matter of level of maturity of the papers, and the 3 additional papers focusing on spectrum, numbering, and satellite authorization are already in the pipeline and will be available soon. Before, let's say, moving into the merit, I would just like to give you some tips on how to, let's say, read the paper. The structure basically is the same. We have followed the same format for all of the 16 papers and the 3 to come. We try to keep them as short as possible, depending also on the topic, with, let's say, some key messages on the top in an opening box. Then we have provided a very, very quick recap of the proposal as in the DNA, the BEREC assessment, and finally, some BEREC proposal, whenever possible, also alternative options. I would just like to flag the fact that this is, an exercise that we have, me and Erwin, coordinated with the support of all of the other working group co-chairs. So this is a collective effort of all of the experts which are committed within BEREC activities. I will move on to the next slide. As you may see, we have organized the presentation trying to follow a logical order, and naturally the objectives of this new piece of regulation comes first. In that respect, the objectives to be pursued by the DNA have been discussed at length during the preparatory work, and at the end, what we see in Article 3 of the proposal is that the existing regulatory objectives are maintained and other new regulatory goals are being introduced. From BEREC perspective, we welcome the preservation of the protection of end user, and also the enhancement, I would say, not just the preservation of the single market goal, which is one of the most relevant goal to be pursued by means of the DNA. And we also welcome the introduction of new regulatory goals, and namely the one of promoting competitiveness, resilience, and sustainability. On a negative tone, we remarks and we are concerned about the fact that the competition seems to be downgraded compared to what it is now in the current code, from a self-standing regulatory goal to a tool to ensure, let's say, the provision of high quality and affordable service to end users. We, as BEREC, firmly believe that the promotion of competition is the trigger and the let's say the booster of for the reach of all other regulatory objectives. Promotion of investment, single market, and ultimately end user protection, and we would call for a restatement of competition, protection of competition as a standalone primary regulatory goal. On a different note, the paper also flagged the fact that the reinforcement and the pursuit of competitiveness, which is now addressed as a goal to be pursued within the specific sector of connectivity, probably can be seen in a broader perspective to be addressed in the light of promoting competitiveness of the EU economic environment as a whole. And finally, on objective, we would like also to see the efficient investment goal reinstated as it is now in the current code. Next slide, please. Another topic which was very, very, let's say, in-depth discussed during the preparatory work, and referring also to the white paper and the follow-up consultation was the scope of the DNA. In that context, the idea of broadening the scope of the new sector regulation was, let's say, addressed in order to, let's say, address the new interaction between the traditional and the new digital connectivity features. The DNA confirms somehow those significant technology and market developments in the digital ecosystem and the stronger independence between the traditional telecom service, so to say, and digital service. The paper highlights the fact that BEREC, as you know, has been devoting attention to the new digital market dynamics, also by means of our dedicated working group, and similar dynamic of interaction have been identified all along this year between traditional and new digital connectivity players. In such context, BEREC has already identified areas where the, let's say, competitive dynamics works far well, and so no need for regular intervention is needed. An example is the one of IP interconnection, while other, let's say, areas where possible existing and possible new bottlenecks may arise would deserve further investigation. So looking at the concrete proposal on the DNA, we see that the consequence of such analysis of the interplay between digital and traditional network is addressed in a twofold way. First one, we see that the scope of the DNA seems to be broadened to cover new players. I'm referring, for example, to the definition provided by Article 2 on interconnection, on the subjective scope for general authorization obligation as in Article 9. The second way the DNA addresses these new, let's say, digital challenges is by means of the dedicated mechanism called as ecosystem cooperation, to which Article 191, 192, and 193 are devoted. In this respect, basically the analysis and the take of BEREC is to remain fully committed to monitor the developments in the digital sector, both through stakeholders engagement and keeping on the analysis at technical and market level. The definition impacting on the scope in BEREC view require internal consistency and probably some fine-tuning in order to avoid any let's say, ambiguity in the definition of the mandatory tools and the voluntary tools, which seems to run in parallel and without any potential overlapping. I'm thinking, for example, to the area of dispute resolution and the voluntary conciliation of the provided by the articles on the ecosystem cooperation. Also, the ecosystem cooperation articles and the mechanism probably have to be better clarified and streamlined in order to, let's say, reduce at the minimum the burden, both for the race, the BEREC, and the market player, and to allow a more flexible approach to possible and emerging issues that can be, let's say, analyzed by means of this new tool. In that respect, it is important to flag that the DNA in one of the recitals, if I'm right, 402, provides this idea of a structured dialogue among traditional and digital players, which we value a lot in order to try to tackle and then hopefully to solve any potential issue in the digital ecosystem. Last but not least, we also flag the fact that strangely enough, in a paper, in a piece of regulation which is named the Digital Networks Act, a definition of digital network is missing. So it is important basically to, let's say, address this fact and let's say, we believe that a principle-based definition, still based on the technology neutrality, could help the DNA to be, let's say, up to date and fit for purpose also for the year to come. So in the next 10 years, when it is expected to, let's say, to deploy its regulatory effects. I will move on to the next one. Yes, another important aspect, which is, I would say, one of the flagship novelties of the DNA is the new approach, a new harmonized approach to the general authorization regime. Basically, the general authorization regime now, the novelties introduced can be, let's say, broadly welcomed by BEREC, and I'm referring to the proposal to have a default notification system for all undertakings, the proposal to rely on a binding notification, single binding notification template to be prepared by BEREC. Also, the intervention to reduce and harmonize further the conditions that can be attached to general authorization are welcome, and the role that the DNA allocates to BEREC to provide guidelines to foster the consistent implementation of the general authorization condition. This is something that BEREC is ready to take, although it is important to mention the fact that, as you, I mean, or at least those of you who are, let's say, active as market player, probably know that not all of the, let's say, condition and, let's say, attached to the general authorization can be easily addressed by means of sectoral regulation, but they are sometimes stemming from very specific pieces of national legislation. So in the end, we will do our best, but let's see how far can we go in pursuing this harmonization. A big and a huge matter of concern is instead raised by the single passport proposal, which, let's say, raises serious doubts from different angles. You may look at more in detail in the paper. I will just mention the most important ones, and I personally believe that the most important one is the uncertainty in terms of the jurisdiction. You know how the system works, probably. In a nutshell, basically, one operator who is who is willing to provide services and network and services in more than one member state may submit a notification to a single member state, and this has some consequences in terms of enforcement of the authorization condition. This basically implies a sort of de facto country of origin principle, which, let's say, deprives NRAs where the services are actually provided in the different countries to monitor and enforce in a proper and effective way the national provision. But there are many other aspects which concern us, the very complex level of interaction between all the parties which are involved into this single passport system, the NRAs of establishment, the NRAs of, so to say, destination, the ODN, the market player. So it's a very complicated system whose, let's say, cost benefit we really don't believe it's in the end positive. Other aspects which are not less relevant are also the uneven distribution of administrative burden among the different NRAs, also taking into account the fact that also, based on the experience we had in other sectors, there can be also some forum shopping choices by the market players, not necessarily related to sector-specific rules. And last but not least, also the difficulties for NRAs to enforce, let's say, the rules regarding the financing of the market for their activity, which may in the end also impact on the regulatory capacity and ultimately on the independence. So what's basically what we would like to propose here? First of all, it is important that the single passport regime, if kept at all, should be clearly, let's say, separate between any consequence in terms of enforcement and monitoring. So let's say the notification, the NRAs who receive the notification shouldn't be in charge for the enforcement in all of the member states where the operator is expected to provide the service. And then all the other proposals from, as long as we achieve that, all the other proposals, so the idea of streamlining the condition, the single template for all European countries, and also the possibility to have a single entry point, probably relying on the already existing European database, which is handled currently by the BEREC office, in the future for the ODN, can be explored. Next slide, please. Sustainability is another new regulatory objective pursued by the DNA. And again, as you know, BEREC has devoted a lot of attention to that and how regulation, sectoral regulation, could help Europe to meet the green transition goal by means of specific sectoral initiatives. So it is not surprisingly that we are basically supporting the introduction of this new goal in the sectoral regulation. Mainly due, also, I would say not mainly, also due to the fact that the sustainability, contrary to other regulatory objectives, is not developed in a specific section of the DNA. There are still some aspects that need to be clarified. First of all, the concept of sustainability, which is used all along the DNA in different way. Environmental sustainability is as we interpret, but there are other areas where sustainability has an economic meaning or a social meaning. I'm thinking, for example, on the concept of sustainability in the process of Copper-Risk-Choff. And then also other, let's say, technical but not insignificant aspects need to be fine-tuned in the relevant regulation. For example, the reference to low carbon, which is now referred to the network, probably it should be not referred to the network as a whole, but to specific digital element of the network. And another important aspect we would like to clarify is the set of interaction between the NRAs, which are members of BEREC, and other competent authorities in the decision of collecting data, the sufficiency of those data in order to, let's say, to monitor sustainability goals, because the text as it is now seems to, let's say, it is not that clear in order to provide NRAs with the sufficient autonomy to ask data unless, let's say, double checking such need with other national level competent authority, which obviously can make the process a little bit more complicated to be handled. In order to, let's say, not to bore that much, we decided with my fellow co-chair, which is online, Erwin Kaisinger, to split the presentation. We will take the floor twice, 2 times each, and I will leave the floor to Erwin to follow up with the rest of the papers, so to say.
Thank you very much, Antonello. I hope that you can hear me well. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very sorry that I couldn't be there in person, but just let me continue the presentation with the next slides, which you can see that it's another novelty of the DNA. And this is about resilience and preparedness in the proposal. Let me also start with the positive side. So we really have no doubts about and we fully support the new sectoral focus on resilience, and we will be partner in this area. The issues what we detected is that, and this is we will be very cautious about that the interplay among different authorities in this area seems quite complex, and also not about the authorities, but among the different EU legislations, and this should be definitely clarified in the future. You might also know that the essence of the proposal in this area is that we should prepare a kind of preparedness plan, and this is originally in the proposal assigned to the ODN, to the existing BEREC office, and we believe that this should be assigned to us, to BEREC, because we do have the expertise expertise on this field, but definitely with the support of the new ODN. There is another aspect, and this is about the timing of the preparation of the plan. We believe that this must be more flexible because this 1 year period for completing this very challenging task is quite problematic. We also suggest in the paper that the definition of critical communications to be included in the DNA, just to ensure legal certainty. And the last point about this topic is that you know that there is a strong connection to the general authorization regime. And so based on any risk detected, then the rights to provide networks and services can be withdrawn, but this should be considered as a last resort, and also the NRA's discretion in relation to general authorization must be preserved. So let's move on the next slide, which is about a topic which is not entirely from the coming from the DNA, but rather from the CSA, and this is the issue of the phasing out of the high-risk vendors. And we also believe that it's helpful if we publish a paper about this. Again, starting with the positive sides, we support the goal of strengthening network security and resilience, but this must be done on a balanced, proportionate, and evidence-based way because of the concerns what we share with many market participants. Namely, we can see that the forced replacement of equipment could slow down investments in NGNs. Also, as a last result or final result, it can be a reduced investment capacity of the operators, and also this could very significantly will have an impact on connectivity goals. We can also see that as a result of this very forced process, the most probably higher prices can be passed on end users. We also detected that the proposal can result in delay of fiber 5G and 6G deployments. So based on this analysis, we also propose some recommendations. So first of all, the life cycle alignment with network should be aligned with. So the life cycle alignment with network investment cycles should be ensured. We also propose a kind of risk-based implementation, not with rigid deadlines. And also, we would like to avoid the premature replacement of the equipment. We propose case-by-case assessments and also some ongoing monitoring and adjustment of the timelines if they are needed. And also, we are offering and we are requesting the NRA's involvement in the enforcement and proportionality checks. Moving on the next slide, let me continue with the next topic, which is about governance, where BEREC is quite happy to see that the proposal maintains the existing two-tier structure of BEREC, and also we very much welcome that there is a more coherent and clearly defined set of NRA competencies. This will be a great help for our future work. And we believe that will help us to preserve independence and ensure regulatory capacity of the DNAs. On the other hand, and I think that this was mentioned by Antonello when he was speaking about the general authorization, there are some provisions in the DNA which might have an impact on the financing, the national financing of the NRAs. and we need to pay attention to this. Also, we detected some substantive changes to the BEREC layout, which could be harmful, and this which could jeopardize the effective functioning of the two-tier structure. And also, as a final impact, they can have an influence on NRA's independence. What are these changes? So there are several proposals which shift BEREC's tasks to the ODN. So we really would like to see that BEREC is in the driving seat with the very important support of the ODN. Another area is that there is a kind of incorporation of non-independence bodies in BEREC working groups, which we can see quite dangerous. And also, so lastly, the European Commission's veto powers in staff and financing matters. We also would like to maintain the current way of voting, so the current voting quorum, which we believe works quite well. And just like other stakeholders, we also noted the very immense number of implementing acts proposed in the DNA, and we believe that this must be justified. And also, if in relation to those implementing acts, a BEREC guideline is needed, then we really would like to ask the co-legislator to ensure that that those BEREC guidelines should be duly considered by the European Commission when they are developing their implementing acts. And with this, I finish my part now, and I would like to give back the floor to Antonello, who's going to continue with access regulation.
Okay, so next slide, please. I see that we are running short in time, and I would just like to, let's say, focus on the very main messages that we would like to convey at this stage. So the next 5 slides are devoted to 5 papers that in a bunch are addressing one of the topics which is traditionally at the core of sector regulation. I'm referring to fixed access network regulation. In general terms, we welcome the fact that the DNA preserves the structure, the fundamental structure of the existing regulation based on the market analysis and the identification of significant market power and the remedies and the possibility to introduce ex-ante remedies. So besides that, there's an aspect, fundamental aspects we are a little bit concerned, which is the fact that the relevant market recommendation, which, as you know now, is a very important tool to address the activities of the NRAs, is not going to be any longer, let's say, a prescriptive tool, but it can be an option. The Commission may decide to issue a recommendation or not. This provides us with several, reflects several issues, basically several problems, which are basically, let's say, risk hindering let's say, the regulatory predictability without any, let's say, clear picture of how and in which direction NRAs are going, and in the end also possible drawbacks in terms of the harmonization, and also the possibility and the risk of increasing regulatory burden for NRAs and for all actors involved into the market analysis is an issue we would like to flag. Another aspect that we are concerned about is the fact that the DNA proposes a 1-year duration to run, let's say, the market analysis. This is a term which basically, according to the experience we all have at national level, unrealistic. And the proposal is basically to keep the term flexible, not to identify any specific terms for the completion of the market analysis. Should there be any, let's say, term identified, we believe that the 3 years term with the possibility also for an extension, an additional year, can be a suitable timeline to complete the whole set of activities which are, let's say, due to be completed to run a market analysis. If we are to stick to the 1 year threshold proposed by the DNA, but this is very, very last result, third or next best option, still we would like to flag the fact that this term is the clock starts from the launch of the public consultation. We all know that before preparing a draft proposal to be put on public consultation, there are many activities that have to be done by the NRAs, data gathering, hearings, let's say analysis. And so, I mean, the real start of any timing that should be introduced in the DNA, we suggest to start from the first issue of a public consultation by the NRAs. I would like to move to the next slide, and moving to the next step of the ex ante SMP regulation. BEREC is basically, let's say, convinced, based on the, let's say, now 25 years of experience, that the fundamental context of ex ante regulation is to address the concern identified by means of the market analysis, by the on-field day-to-day expertise and knowledge of the market, which is developed by the NRAs, with a set of proportionate remedies, also taking into account the specificities of the national situation, and sometimes not just national, but even regional or local. In that respect, we are concerned about the fact that the DNA, let's say, addresses the way national regulators can introduce ex ante remedies in a very centralized manner. Again, as it is for the decision not to go any longer with the recommendation, running the risk to contradict the, let's say, expected goal of regulatory harmonization. And there are several signals of this centralized approach, starting from the introduction of a commission veto on the national decision remedies, also the rigid sequence of remedies that needs to be followed by the NRAs is somehow something which is really, let's say, hindering the link, the obligation and the outcome of the market analysis, because sometimes some of the remedies should be considered to be applied at the same time in a complementary way. And so in the end, the sequence is basically artificially breaking this approach, which is now followed at national level by the NRAs. And then, last but not least, also this idea of introducing, before going to specific tailored remedies, these harmonized wholesale access product is a little bit confusing, because first it is not clear which are the technical features of this remedy, and we expect that it is going to be quite challenging to be defined, those features. Second point, the introduction can be costly and lengthy. And third one, we really believe that, I mean, on the basis of what I just said, in order to keep the leverage of a proportionate intervention in the NRA's hands, we believe that in the end, this kind of remedy wouldn't really be helpful in order to pursue the goal of the internal market. Let's move on to the next slide, which is basically dealing with symmetric regulation. I will be very short in that. The message is that basically we welcome the DNA approach in not only making possible but also promoting the possibility for NRAs to use symmetrical means, symmetrical tools, also on their own initiative. And we have identified and flagged in the paper some aspects of the current proposal that may even further in, let's say, promote and simplify the possibility, the ability for the NRAs to use symmetric regulation tools. In particular, the list of the exemptions which are listed in the DNA can be basically, let's say, removed and replaced by a more general reference of principle of proportionality in order for NRAs to go in that direction. And other technical aspects, let's say, are proposed in the paper in order to fine-tune and simplify further the life for NRAs who are willing to go for symmetric regulation. I will move on to the next one, which is addressing another important piece of regulation introduced, or let's say, introduced by the DNA, which is the copper switch, the process that should lead to complete copper switch off all across Europe. Here, we think that in general terms, the process, especially compared with what we discussed in the preparatory work, has improved a lot. And let's say it is good that the DNA recognizes a central role for NRAs and member states in order to define national processes and also possible layer of flexibility. Yet we believe that some additional level of flexibilities need to be introduced in order to have, in the end, a balanced, proportionate process. First of all, we identify the need to have some sort of exemption for the, let's say, strict application of the copper switch off proceeding in those member states where the copper switch off process is already up and running and well advanced. So in the end, it is there's no point in, let's say, adding up a new procedure and duplicating and slowing down the process. Second point, the papers also identify some possible drawbacks, let's say, linked to the fact of the concept of copper switch off to be extended also to in-building infrastructure and connection. There are several, let's say, drawbacks in let's say, impulsing such approach, both in terms of competitive impact, but also in terms of the possibility to ensure, in the end, the connectivity for the end user. So the suggestion is to limit the scope of the copper switch off up to the building serving point. Also, some rigidities, let's say, are identified in this, let's say, process which is due to drive to an unconditional switch off after 2035, and also some flexibility is requested here. Finally, I would just like to flag the fact that end user information is very important in order to ensure a smooth and successful process. And the proposal is to broaden and to extend the information obligation to all parties, including the providers of retail services and access seekers. Next one, please. Okay, here there's a, let's say, a specific paper devoted to a single definition, which is anyway not irrelevant in order for ensure the good functioning of the DNA, but even beyond the DNA, the already existing pieces of regulation like the GIA and the Digital Decade Policy Program. I'm referring to the concept of gigabit network that sometimes seems to be differing from the very high capacity network concept, which is basically the one currently used within the GIA and for the identification of the targets of the Digital Decade Policy Program. and also the fact that the gigabit network seems to be, let's say, identified as a synonym for FTTH, so hardly matching with the concept of mobile network. So all in all, the proposal is basically to keep the VHCN definition for the current regulatory purpose and to clarify in a more technology neutral way the definition of gigabit network. This is my last, let's say, time I pass on the floor to Erwin, and then we hope we will be finalizing the presentation as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Actually, I will do my best. I still have 5 slides, but I try to be quite fast. So on the next slide, please move. Okay, we also have a paper about information requests and the geographical surveys of the broadband networks. And here our main message is that we are fully aligned with the Commission and support the goals of simplifications and harmonization of sectoral reporting obligations. And if we can make it better for the industry and for our purposes, we will be great partners in this. But we shouldn't forget that the importance of data for effective market monitoring and better regulation. So we definitely need to find the right balance. And what we are proposing is an alternative solution. So we are very happy to contribute and develop a kind of simplification roadmap along with the co-legislators. So what we would envisage here is a more flexible and the less detailed, less granular approach in terms of information request. We can move on to the next slide, which is quite a complex topic, and we wanted to address end user rights in one single paper, but this is a mission impossible. So we have some targeted sub-papers in the area of end user rights. We are glad to see that the DNA foresees sectoral end user protection. And we are also aligned with the statement that the provisions on end user rights are mostly still fit for purpose. And on the different subtopics, so the first one is maximum harmonization. We can see that the DNA proposal in its current form may not be sufficient to ensure effective enforcement on national markets. So therefore, this should be there should be a follow-up. There should be some further activities to be done. On categories of end users, we are quite cautious on whether that the proposal can result in a situation when important categories of end users are just missing out and they are not covered by the regulation. On contractual terms and transparency, we are advocating for the rights of member states who should retain sufficient powers to specify information transparency and contract-related requirements. Let's move on to the next slide, please. And the next topic is switching and number portability. And here we believe that the best way to move forward is that harmonization should remain proportionate. And also, it would be very important to maintain NRA's competence and distinguish clearly between switching and number portability procedures. On fraud, we recommend a more streamlined framework for combating fraudulent activities. On emergency communication, which was slightly touched on earlier at the debriefing, we would like to ask for clarification on in the DNA, and also we would like to preserve member states' powers for granting access to emergency communications. On my next slide, I'm continuing with the end user rights on privacy. There should be a clear distinction between the responsibilities between NRAs and competent authorities, where this is relevant. On dispute resolution, we also ask for some clarifications, and also a much broader much broader scope for dispute resolution. And also, lastly, in relation to this topic, the end users right, we definitely would like to see a clearer allocation of responsibilities of end user protections under the DNA, and this should result in a situation which ensures that the NRAs have supervisory and enforcement powers, which is helpful to ensuring end user rights. Let's move on the next slide, which is about net neutrality. We are very glad that net neutrality is confirmed in the DNA as a fundamental principle of the framework. But we can also observe that the open internet regulation recitals are missing. So if those are embedded in the DNA, we are certain that legal certainty can be improved. We also discussed shortly the implementing acts. Also, the Commission might adopt an implementing act on open internet. And we strongly believe that here a strong cooperation is needed between the Commission and BEREC, because we just presented to you the BEREC open internet guidelines. So we also very glad to see that the annual reporting duty of the NRAs might be turned into a 2-yearly exercise, which is in line with the simplification requirement. And there is one last point on this area, is that we call that the open internet obligations relating to transparency remain fully enforceable to all end users, not only a smaller category of end users. With this, let me move on my next topic, which is universal service, on the next slide. Here, what I can mention to you is that we are welcoming that the DNA proposal maintains universal service in the framework. However, it seems that it is reducing member states' flexibility. And also, this creates some regulatory uncertainty through unclear allocation of roles between the Commission and BEREC. Earlier, I also mentioned the categories of users. So here we call the attention that we shouldn't miss certain categories of users. And lastly, about the compensation, we are quite cautious on the proposal to shift towards horizontal state aid and service of general economic interest-based financing, which would be harmful to the national financing of the universal services. So with this, we finish this long presentation. I hope that you found it interesting, and we are try to answer your question. Back to you, Marko.
Thank you, Erwin. Thank you, Antonello, for presenting BEREC's assessment of the Digital Network Act proposal adopted by the BOR on the last plenary meeting. The last 3 documents will be published in the next days. We will now move to the final substantive part of today's briefing and provide an update on BEREC's recent activities and achievements since the last plenary meeting. This section covers the key documents adopted by the Board of Regulators, stakeholders engagement activities, international cooperation, upcoming workshops, and ongoing public consultations. These activities reflect BEREC's continued commitment to supporting consistent regulatory approaches across Europe and contributing to the development of competitive, innovative, and end-user-focused digital connectivity ecosystem. Let me provide an overview of the main updates. Next slide, please. At last plenary meeting, the Board of Regulators adopted a number of important documents across several areas of BEREC's work program. These include updated guidelines on geographical service of network deployment, retail and wholesale roaming, as well as a report covering key regulatory topics such as WACC parameters and consumer switching and contract termination. Regarding the guidelines on geographical service of network deployment, the update was intentionally limited and focused on areas where changes were needed in light of BEREC's 2024 implementation report, recent soft law developments, and technological progress. Key changes include greater flexibility in fixed broadband speed categories, a more realistic definition of available capacity of fixed wireless access coverage, the introduction of optional indicators, alternative approaches to mobile coverage mapping, and targeted improvements to data verification processes. The board also adopted several reports summarizing stakeholders' feedback received through recent public consultations and workshops. Together, these documents provide further guidance to national regulatory authorities, support consistent implementation of the European regulatory framework, and contribute to ongoing policy discussions across the sector. All adopted documents are available on the BEREC website. Next slide, please. Beyond the formal plenary discussions, BEREC also organized a series of stakeholder engagement activities alongside the meetings. This included meet and greet session with the BEREC Working Group Co-Chairs, providing stakeholders with an opportunity to exchange views directly with experts involved in BEREC's work. The conference, Shaping BEREC's 2027 Work Program, brought together policymakers, regulators, industry representatives, and other stakeholders to discuss the future direction of electronic communications regulation in Europe. The event features keynote speeches by Executive Vice President Henna Virkkunen and Executive Director of the Smart Networks and Services Joint Undertaking, Elizabeth Fittori, as well as panel discussions on Europe's future digital framework and emerging developments in connectivity and networks. The conference materials, presentations, and recordings are available on BEREC's website for those who would like to explore the discussions in more detail. Next slide, please. BEREC also continued its international engagement through participation in the ITU Global Symposium of Regulators, which took place in Ankara, Turkey, from 12th to 15th May. The symposium brought together regulators, policymakers, and industry representatives from around the world to discuss key developments in digital regulation and connectivity. BEREC used this opportunity to exchange experiences with the international partners and to contribute to discussions of the future of communications regulation. A key takeaway from these discussions was the importance of regional and international cooperation in developing effective, future-proof regulatory approaches that can respond to rapid technological change. Next slide, please. BEREC also continues to facilitate dialogue on emerging issues through dedicated workshops involving stakeholders, experts, and public authorities. In May, BEREC organized an external workshop on combating digital fraud, focusing on current challenges and possible regulatory and industry responses. Earlier this week, BEREC held a workshop on accessibility of electronic communication services, highlighting the importance of ensuring that digital services remain accessible and inclusive for all users. Looking ahead, BEREC will organize a workshop on digital sufficiency in September, providing an opportunity to explore how sustainability considerations can be integrated into the digital ecosystem. We encourage all interested stakeholders to participate in these discussions and contribute their expertise. Next slide, please. Finally, I would like to highlight several ongoing public consultations currently open for stakeholder input. These consultations covered a range of topics, including the roaming benchmark data collection template, the draft further guidance on the 5G network slicing, and BEREC's forthcoming opinion on the context on the review of the EU roaming regulation and the related fair use policy and sustainability framework. Public consultations are an important part of BEREC's work, helping to ensure that our positions and recommendations are informed by a broad range of stakeholder perspectives. We therefore encourage all interested parties to review the consultation documents and submit their contributions with the respective deadlines. Further information is available on the BEREC website. Next slide, please. So this concludes the second part of today's briefing, covering BEREC's assessment of the Digital Network Act proposal, as well as recent BEREC activities and developments. We would now be happy to take any remaining questions on the topics presented during this part of the session. Please feel free to raise any question or comment, and we will do our best to address them. So anyone from the audience would like to raise the question, please.
I hope that works. So if I may break the ice, Anton Hochko, Deutsche Telekom Brussels office. I have one question towards Erwin and Antonio, but before that, just very briefly, one point. Thank you very much for your pragmatic approach towards the proposal on the European access product. We diverged on quite some points on the DNA, US BEREC and we as industry, but on that, I think we are quite aligned, at least many industry players. Essentially, we've been trying to convey this message since quite long that proposing a European access product is basically like proposing a European cake recipe by saying that it has to be a little bit like everything, like strudel, like honey cake, like tartatin. But now I come to my question. Erwin, Antonio, I'm pretty much concerned by your point on trying to exclude the in-building fiber wiring from the scope of transition or from copper to fiber. That's a really tricky question in quite many markets where we as DT are present. And to put it in plain words, we can't imagine a situation that one day there will be quite still performant hybrid copper fiber connection like VDSL switched off under the premise that customers have fiber somewhere 50 meters or 100 meters near the apartment, and then the customers will be waiting for 1 year or maybe even more just because the landlord is unwilling to grant the permission to build this really last meters of fiber. That's really a big deal, which we're seeing in some markets where we are present, and apparently if you have some really good arguments, why do you propose to exclude it? That would be very important for us to hear and understand that.
Thank you very much for the question. I will give the floor now back to maybe.
Okay, shall we answer
Or
one by one,
first,
or-
let's take questions first, maybe. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Tilman Kupfer. I work for ANGA, which is a German-based trade association looking after broadband. I have a question to Erwin. First of all, thank you very much also that BEREC is looking into the connections between the DNA and the CSA2 proposals. I was wondering how much you distinguished in your analysis between the fixed networks and the mobile sector, and the impact of the CSA, particularly also on the fixed network sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's come back to the co-chairs.
Okay. Question online to you. Okay. So basically, I mean, I'm just replying to the question on, let's say, the exclusion of, let's say, copper switch off in wiring. Actually, we have identified several drawbacks in including the in-wiring, the in-building wiring in the copper switch off mandatory goals. But, and this is something we can probably discuss more in detail afterwards. The point you make, in my personal view, can be seen exactly in the opposite way. I will try to explain. I mean, in case we consider the copper switch off mandatory also in the civil premises, and assuming that for some reasons the network provider or even let's say blockages or constraints from the landlord are let's say are enforced, then in the end, if nevertheless you had to go through the process and switching off the copper, in that case you may find yourself, you or the people who are especially in old building where this kind of let's say internal work will take time, probably without any service at all. So this is the reason in which led us to consider this let's say outside the obligation of mandatory switch off. You know what I mean? So I see the problem of the delays, but if the delays is going to happen, not necessarily for, let's say, tactical reason, but for sometimes objective reason, or even, let's say, opposition by landlords or whatever, then in the end, if the copper switch off shall be pursued without any, let's say, flexibility, then in the end, the people may find themselves without the final connection. So this is the point. We believe that probably some flexibility, and the proposal is to stay up to the outside the building is addressed. But okay, this is something we can discuss further internally, and once you.
Erwin.
Yeah, and Katja, please just help me to answer that question, because we are very glad that our fellow co-chair who's responsible for this topic is sitting at the table right now. Thanks, Katja.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. With regard to the analysis of this CNA and DNA relation, and you were asking about the data on the mobile and fixed markets. Of course, we are all aware that 5G toolbox has been around for quite some years now, and this one is relating to the mobile networks. But the current CSA2 proposals indeed takes into account all digital networks. So meaning on top of mobile, also fixed, satellite, and also submarine cables, yes. So, but if you're asking BEREC if we performed any analysis on the impact, no, in such a short time, that's unfortunately not even possible. But we are discussing this issue also with operators. So that's why we have prepared this paper. So when you have the chance, read it, and we will work on it further as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Katja. Thank you, Erwin, Antonello. We have one additional question on the chat. So EU law professor Roberto Mastroianni considers key provisions on the Digital Network Act to be incompatible with the EU law. For instance, forced copper phase-out. Report has just been published. What is BEREC assessment? What impact could this have on national legislation? So actually, the answer, BEREC's answer is, so BEREC has not yet formally assessed Professor Mastroianni's report. As a general point, any legal analysis raising questions about the compatibility with the EU primary law deserves careful considerations by the co-legislator and the commissions. Regarding the copper switch off, especially BEREC has consistently argued that the migration measures must preserve legal certainty, competition, and end-user protection. If provisions were ultimately found incompatible with the EU law, this could require amendments to the DNA and consequently adjustments to the national implementation measures. With that, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you all for your attention and for joining us. I wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you.